Good afternoon, everybody. Perhaps good morning if you're on the west coast of our country. Welcome in to a week 17 unbelievable edition of the Established to Run First Look Show. I'm Gary Hartman. Be taking you on a quick journey today of the upcoming DFS slate, the first of 2023, as we have New Year's Eve on Saturday. Back to a Sunday slate after the Saturday Christmas Eve. I hope you all had a fantastic holiday weekend. Hope you're all enjoying this time of year, and hope that it's been a fruitful one for you all, whether it was in DFS last week or if you are going into the finals of your season-long fantasy or in some best ball finals. I hope that a lot of you out there are, and I wish you the best of luck moving forward here. But if you are not, and even if you are, but if you're not and you're looking to turn your heads back to DFS, this week we have a full slate on tap for week 17. That is 13 games on the Sunday main slate with no buys, no Saturday games, no extra primetime games, just a normal 3 primetimes, a Thursday night, a Sunday night, and a Monday night, and the rest are on our Sunday main slate. So a big slate, obviously, for playoff purposes. So most of the teams have a lot to play for. We'll talk about a little bit of the few teams that really don't, but we'll talk all that through. As usual, I just want to kind of run through the teams that are not on this slate. The Dallas Cowboys play the Tennessee Titans on Thursday night. The Titans were one of those aforementioned teams that really don't have anything to play for. Not consequential to us as, focused on the main slate here. So that's one. And then the Steelers and Ravens are on Sunday night. That was flexed into that spot. So no Steelers or Ravens on this slate. And then Monday night is a big one, the Bills and Bengals, perhaps an AFC Championship preview or something similar. So those are your main teams off the slate. It's really just those Bills and Bengals and I guess the Cowboys to an extent that are consequential for us for DFS purposes. Going to do really rapid fire this week because it is such a big slate. Kind of want to go quickly between our first glance, first look at plays that kind of jump off the page here. So let's start at quarterback. Obviously, right up top, you do have Patrick Mahomes, who is still now our MVP favorite, with Jalen Hurts likely to be on the shelf, at least this week. I think probably for the rest of the regular season. I don't see a reason to put him back out there, especially with Lane Johnson now going down. So Mahomes definitely has a lot to play for. The Chiefs are still in play for the 1 seed. They're at home against Denver. This Denver team is just absolutely reeling. Obviously, they got rid of Nathaniel Hackett this week. Maybe they'll play a little bit harder, but that was an embarrassment of a performance against Baker Mayfield and the Rams on Christmas Sunday. So, really embarrassing. This is at home in Arrowhead. I have no reason to think that Mahomes can't put up a huge game. I'll have plenty of interest, despite what you see here as in DraftKings points, Denver being first against quarterbacks. I'm not concerned based on what we're seeing from this Denver team right now at home. I already mentioned Hurts. I don't think he's playing. I do love Justin Fields this week, and I so much so that I put him as the cover boy of this video. I just think that no one's going to really want to pay up for him when there's all these spend down options. He's in the Coors Field of football at Ford Field in Detroit this week. I think, chat's already talking about Jared Goff. I do think Jared Goff's an excellent play. Definitely will be in play for cash and tournaments, and you get a big discount on him. So don't get me wrong. I'm into Jared Goff, but there's no doubt that Jared Goff doesn't really have these 40-point ceilings that Justin Fields has. And I get that his, weaponry is a little suspect. I just think in this matchup, in this game, his ability to use his legs, we saw Detroit get ran all over last week after them being fantastic against the run. So I think Fields is a great tournament option this week at what I expect to be pretty low ownership. Really like Fields a lot in that game environment. Herbert, you get last night. He played on Monday night last night, only 7.5 points. He still threw the ball 30 times. We just have not even come close to seeing a ceiling out of Justin Herbert. I don't really know what's going on there, but it is not good for fantasy purposes. I think Brandon Staley is really holding this team back in a big way. I'm not interested in going there, even at home against the Rams. Really, right now, you have so many teams on the slate, so many great options. I'm assuming Tua is not going to play and the concussion protocol. Wish him the best of luck. Rough season for him with the injury stuff and the way it's been handled. Either way, it'll be a tough spot in New England. Kirk Cousins goes into Green Bay. Not really into him in these mid 6K prices, in a tough spot with Green Bay playing pretty well. Trevor Lawrence is one of the aforementioned teams that does not have anything to play for. The Titans Jags will be decided in week 18. That division, the division will be decided there. So I don't know what Jacksonville and Doug Peterson are planning on doing this week, but I just think it would be, while it's a good spot in Houston and we've seen these ceiling games, I just think it's a little bit too cute to go there to one of the few teams that has nothing to play for this week. Now, if we get a full report that, hey, Peterson's giving it a full go, he's not changing anything, I would be interested in sprinkling in some Trevor Lawrence in tournaments, but I want that report first. Not going to Tom Brady right now. This Tampa team stinks. Carolina's defense has been better of late. Obviously, Tampa can clinch the division this weekend, I think, with a win. So yeah, he'll have a lot to play for, but I'm just not interested in tournaments. Rodgers, I think, is interesting. Although, again, another guy we haven't seen the ceiling of at all, at least threw the ball 38 times in Miami, back home this week in division. Would expect he'll be plenty motivated. The Vikings have been a pass funnel for sure. I don't know what the weather's looking like in Green Bay yet this weekend, but I think you can put him in your tournament pool. Geno Smith gets a tough matchup with the Jets. Less interested there. Deshaun Watson just has not shown us anything really so far this year. Does get a Washington team that is able to, you're able to throw on them. I guess you can sprinkle him in. I'm not really interested. I think Daniel Jones is solid, though. Another mid-20s points. Didn't really raise his price. 5,700 at home against the Colts to a chance to clinch a playoff spot here. Obviously, the Colts are not a good team right now in any way. Has that floor with his legs. You see that. Another 34 rushing yards on the ground. Last week, did throw the ball a lot as well in that environment. I do worry about this game ability to push a little bit. This is only a 39.5 point game total right now, over under. So I'm a little bit worried about that, but I do think he's in play. And then I think Gardner Minshew will be in play as well. They only raised his price up $500 or I guess $700, but he's $5,500, not too expensive. Clearly showed that he can run this offense last week, and I don't see a reason to think he can't do it again at home against New Orleans with all this weaponry there. They still want to clinch that number 1 overall seed. I think he's definitely going to be in play again for everyone out there. Same thing with Brock Purdy. Haven't seen a full ceiling here, but been very good. 21 was his high, still only 5,500. Vegas is definitely a team you could throw on. I think you can throw him in your tournament pool. So this is basically this week, Mike White for sure as well, who's been back. Seattle's a really good matchup there. So this week is obviously it's a big slate with tons of options, but you could really make an argument for a ton of quarterbacks here in the mid tier, the cheap tier, and the high end range. Definitely a week that I have to parse through a little bit more, but I think I'd have a difficult time getting my quarterback player pool down to a thin number this week. All right, going on to running back, Christian McCaffrey. Definitely was disappointing last week. We thought, it was 8,800. They've actually priced him up now to 9K against Vegas. Clearly still the focal point of their offense. Washington did a good job game planning around it. Did carry the ball 15 times. I think it was more disappointing through the air. Only 2 targets, 2 catches on those targets. 49ers one-handedly, though. I still think he's got the highest ceiling of any running back on this slate. Wouldn't be afraid to going right back to the well there. Cash, tournaments, whatever you like. So definitely think that's interesting. Eckler last night was the Charger that got there. Obviously still providing that crazy volume in full point PPR. Had another 4 catches last night. Did find the end zone twice, so they're using him in the red zone. Yes, Josh Kelly's using the ball, running the ball a good amount, but I'm not worried about Austin Eckler and his role. Saquon has looked really good the past 2 games, back to being the Saquon we were seeing at the beginning of the season. Obviously, as I mentioned, back home here after 2 straight games on the road, everything to play for. I just mentioned Austin Eckler's ability to move the ball a bit, or at least have success against this Colts team. He's been efficient on the ground of late, did get 18 targets over the last 2 weeks for Saquon Barkley. I'm sure he'll be very popular, but I think he's a great play. Josh Jacobs definitely fallen off a little bit over the past 2 weeks. Vegas doesn't, just draft position really to play for. I'm sure they're going to go out and try to upset San Francisco. Don't love this spot though for Josh Jacobs against a tough Niners D that is very hot. Same thing with Nick Chubb. I was really into Nick Chubb in the weather game, and he was 8 yards away from the bonus, didn't find the end zone. We just haven't seen it out of Chubb in a while. Washington's run defense is pretty good, actually. You beat them more through the air. So I'm not that interested in Chubb either, despite the price down. Connor, though, I think you have to be interested in James Conner. Matchup with Atlanta, and it doesn't matter that they're out of it. His usage just remains elite, playing near 100% of snaps, every single week. So he's involved through the air, obviously involved through the ground, finding the end zone. He just has such a high floor right now, does James Conner. So I think he's a great play. Aaron Jones Did get banged up with an ankle there. Was very disappointing against Miami. We saw what Saquon was able to do them. If we get a full clean bill of health, I think he's all right. Cook on the other side of that game, a little less interested, although he's priced right at $7K against Green Bay. Their defense is playing pretty well on the road. I think Minnesota may be forced to throw a little bit more. Montgomery will definitely be of interest to me after what we saw the Lions' run D just completely collapse last week. He's a little too pricey, so I think people will stay off him at 6,900. But, a way to get exposure to the game that I think everyone's going to want exposure to. That game has a 52-point game total right now, the only game on the main slate with a projected total of over 50 points. So I think this is going to be the one to attack. And in tournaments, always looking for ways to attack the games that we want to attack from different angles. I definitely think David Montgomery could be one of those angles this week. Kamara gets a Philly matchup that's a little tough here. I don't really know what kind of standing he's in. I'd expect they might be playing from behind. I don't love Alvin Kamara this week. Ramondre was super disappointing in week 16 after, he was ruled in without Damian Harris, or Damian Harris was ruled out. Kevin Harris played a lot more than we expected. Ramondre didn't get much done. I do think that might keep the field off him. They're at home here against Miami team. He's involved in the air, obviously. So I like Ramondre as a bounce back candidate this week. ETN would be in a great spot against a really bad Texans D, but again, we just don't know what they may be doing as far as incentive purposes or how much they're planning on playing. So under that, you got Kenneth Walker against the Jets, bad matchup there. Got to give Cam Akers credit. After all the trade rumors midseason, falling out of favor, looked like a shell of himself. Obviously, it's tough coming back from an Achilles, and I think it took a long time for that to kick into gear. But you see these couple games with Baker and where this Rams offense has looked, I guess, a little bit more competent. He certainly has 5 yards to carry in each of the last 2 games. Big, huge game, 3 touchdown, 118-yard game against a Denver defense that I think a lot of us thought was pretty good. Now he goes to a Chargers team that's the way you beat them, is on the ground. I think Cam Akers, they obviously priced him up from 5,200 to 6,100, so it's not as easy of a play, but definitely will be in play for you. Both of the Chiefs running backs, certainly Pacheco and McKinnon. I like McKinnon more still. I love the role there. Did find the end zone again through the air last week, but was disappointing compared to the previous 2 weeks. I'm hoping that takes the field a little bit off of Jarek. Love him in Mahomes stacks. Love him as a one-off. Miles Sanders is now dipped below 6K after 2 straight disappointing weeks. Gets a New Orleans team at home. And then, you got options here. Obviously, Fournette and Rachaad White both look good. Fournette's role, I think they just trust him more in these big games right now, and Brady trusts him more, importantly. And the check down Brady that we're seeing right now to this Tampa Bay offense with their bad offensive line is just really benefiting Leonard Fournette right now with the 10 targets you see, 9 catches. I actually think he's really interesting for tournaments. Rachaad White also obviously did get have a solid game, 15 points, found the end zone, and also had 4 targets. So just targeting these running backs so much. I don't know what's going on with this Indy backfield. Deion Jackson apparently got into some sort of spat with Jeff Saturday, so we saw a lot more Zach Moss. The matchup isn't bad against the Giants, so I think one of these guys could be in play. If it looks like Zach Moss will be getting all the work again, if you're looking for a spend down option, you got them, and you got the 2 Falcons guys as well. Cordarrelle Patterson did get called back from a touchdown there last week, but him and Algier, who seems to be kind of the favorite here for base down work and is really doing pretty well overall. And he's only 5,300. I think he's too cheap for what this role is, in a really good matchup here against Arizona. Like Algier quite a bit, like both of them for tournaments. I want to see where ownership comes in there. DeAndre Swift just been so freaking frustrating for us DFS players week in, week out. 2 weeks ago, he had the 9 targets. At least they get targeted 5 times. The base work is just not there at all, though. So you really need to find the end zone like once or twice here for him, or at least have like a big PPR, full point PPR week for DeAndre Swift. I'm going to be going there this week, as I mentioned, another way to get exposure to this game that we want exposure to, but just something to keep in mind. We'll see what the situation is with the Jets running backs. Donovan Knight to get banged up, came back in the game. I still think they want him to be their base back in a really good matchup here. So at only 5,100, he'll be in play. Tons of guys just up and down the board here this week. So, again, it's going to be a tough week to whittle down your pool if you're looking to do that. I would just, really think about the importance of correlation and what makes sense with each other. I'd also really try to play the ownership game, as there's going to be a lot of guys with similar ceilings, I think. Like the top guys will have similar ceilings. I think the mid tier will have similar ceilings, and the cheap tier will have similar ceilings to each other. So I'd try to play the ownership game a little bit in tournaments and pick on some lower owned guys. As obvious as that sounds, I think it's even more paramount on a huge slate. If ownership is going to condense on certain players, you're going to have a lot of pivot options when your slate is 13 games big. Justin Jefferson still going for that receiving record. Man, he's just unbelievable. The consistency is absurd. 15 targets, 16 targets, 16 targets, another 130 yards and a touchdown through the air. Really crazy. Just 3 straight 30-point games. This is a little bit of a tougher spot in Green Bay against Jair Alexander. In their first matchup, he week 1 had 40 points. So I don't think I'm a little too concerned about that. Obviously, this one's in Green Bay. He's all the way up to 9,500. He's Justin Jefferson. You don't rule him out. Tyreek Hill looks like he'll have Teddy Bridgewater throwing to him. Obviously, he did have some games with Bridgewater earlier in the year, and I don't think he was impacted too much. I think Pittsburgh was one of those games. He only had 14 points. But we know what the ceiling is there. It's a New England team, though. That's a little bit of a tougher spot. Don't necessarily love him as my spend-up option. Do love Devontae Adams as a bounce-back candidate here against San Francisco, who's been vulnerable through the air and really disappointing last 2 weeks. Is getting the targets. I just don't believe in this Vegas team right now, but I definitely want to attack them at home through the air, probably in game script that they may be playing from behind. So I really like Adams as a bounce-back spend-up option this week. A.J. Brown showed that he could still get it done with Minshew. Did have 100 yards, 8 targets. No problem going there, particularly in Eagles stuff. Amon-Ra will be very, very popular in what I'm sure will be the most popular game of the week. Definitely going to be in play for cash games again. They just kept this price right at 7,800 less. This is 4 straight games now. And that's probably where he should be. The problem is he has now dipped right into mediocrity now over the past 4 weeks. But, the targets are there. The underlying stuff is there for the Sun God. I'm not concerned at all. I'll be going back to the well. Just don't know who's throwing Hopkins the ball. It's going to be Colt McCoy this week. If it's McCoy, I'm definitely a little bit more interested. Obviously, then if it was Trace McSorley, he did have 10 targets this past week. Just they were not able to move the ball really at all. But against an Atlanta team, it's a really good matchup here for D-Hop. So that's something to consider. Waddle, similar thing with Tyreek if Bridgewater's playing. We've had 2 straight Waddle weeks now, though. Maybe a league winner there. Don't mind him at 7,500. Devonta was the guy you wanted last week. Maybe it's more of an A.J. Brown. This week, he's priced up now all the way to 7,100. I think I'm a little more off Devonta coming off the big week, especially if people are going to chase it. Keenan Allen, big game last night. Those are the Keenan Allen games that we're used to. The 11 catches, 14 targets, 100 yards. Did not find the end zone. Could have had a much bigger week. Like his role right now a lot. No problems going there. Don't know what's going to happen with Lockett. I would guess with the hand thing that he might not play again. Either way, it's a tough matchup for him or Metcalf against the Jets. Godwin, targets have been really, really consistent. Gets that Carolina team here. Had only 11.5 points in Carolina against them, but did have 13 targets. That was a game that they were just really not able to do anything against. Obviously, back home here, I think he's okay at sub 7K. Mike Williams, a little disappointing last night. If you're going to Herbert stuff, I think he's good. I think I'm not super into it as a one-off play, but obviously you're not ruling him out of tournaments. Mike Evans just continues the season from hell for him. Just nothing. Just going absolutely nothing away. I love the bounce back spot for him. He's had a lot of success against Carolina in the past. Had a 15-target game, almost had 100 yards against them in week 7. I don't mind trying to chase it a little bit in tournaments as the bounce back spot, but man, it's been rough goings there. We'll see. The matchup for Judy and Sutton, if he plays, are actually pretty good against a Chiefs team that's been really vulnerable through the air. Just no idea what to expect this week. Russ Wilson looks like poo-poo, and no idea what to expect with the interim coach and everything like that. But definitely think as bring back options for sure. You are going to want to be interested there. Pittman, I just don't know. Nick Foles, I don't really trust it. The Giants, I expect to have a pretty good game plan playing for that clinch for the playoffs there. I don't love him, even though the price is right. Washington receivers, I think Dotson and McLaurin both in play. Dotson looked really good, and he's still going to be pretty cheap here at only 4,600. So we don't usually talk about under the 5K guys, but he's going to be on my radar once again. Zay Jones, nothing to play for Jacksonville, so I'm not really going to him or Kirk this week very much unless we get full word that they're playing full out, which is possible. And yeah, I would be looking for different ways to attack Chicago, Detroit. So DJ Chark, perhaps taking some flyers on like the Byron Pringles of the world or some of these Chicago receivers. I think you could make the argument. Chase Claypool, we'll see if he goes. I think he'd be in play. But, moreover for them, I'm looking at Kmet and the tight end situation there. He's 4,500, but a really good matchup. I think I'd want a lot of Cole Kmet. Other tight ends this week, Travis Kelce did now back. I mentioned 2 weeks ago how I was kind of starting to get a little bit concerned. Maybe he was hitting a wall. He put those concerns to bed for me after 2 straight 20-plus point weeks once again. So Kelsey for sure on my radar against the Denver team here as they're trying to still compete for that 1 seed. Kittle, late season resurgence for Kittle and Brock Purdy's favorite target, it looks like. We'll see if Debo's back. I think that impacts things a little bit, but huge game, 120 yards, found the end zone twice. This matchup doesn't scare you against Vegas. Definitely like George Kittle. I think he's still underpriced here at only under 6K for what we've seen the last 2 weeks. Hawkinson just destroyed the Giants last week for 13 catches, 109 yards, 2 touchdowns. His role is just so good in Minnesota compared to what it was in Detroit that he'll be on our radars for any GPP week. Goddard came back and looked pretty good. I think he'll, start to get more and more involved in the offense. No problem going there. Although New Orleans is pretty good against tight ends. So I think that's something to consider. Higbee had a big game as well. Huge game on that Sunday slate. 9 for 94 and 2. Definitely looks to be a favorite of Baker Mayfield after not doing too much in the middle of the season here. But, his targets with Baker have been really good. Obviously, that was a very big game. But, think he'd be in play. Jelani Woods was looking good last night. He was able to get open. Obviously, he's a little bit more athletic than Higbee, but he's in play. But it's hard to not like Kmet more right underneath that for $100 less. We already spoke about him. Evan Ingram, less interested this week as I'm kind of going to be fading Jacksonville a little bit as they kind of put all their eggs in the week 18 basket. Although obviously we know his ceiling is there. Waller has definitely been right and back and integrated into this offense. Prefer Devontae Adams if I'm attacking this, but he's only 4,300, so I get it. Everett did not draw a target last night. Obviously, his role has really diminished of late. Not interested in going there. And then as you go down here, I would just really look again. If you're going to cheaper tight ends, I'd really look towards correlation. I want either bringbacks. I want to be double stacks with these kind of guys. Adam always talks about this. Like if you're look for a reason to fill in that tight end position, make it make sense within your lineup, especially as it gets uglier as you go down here. I think some of these guys are in play. So for sure, a big slate and a little bit tougher one to do a first look at. I think that Chicago-Detroit game is going to be super, super popular. So, we're going to be looking for different ways to attack this slate. I don't think weather will be nearly as much of a concern as it was this past week as we had that Arctic blast that roamed through the country. It looks like we're going to have cold weather still, not nearly as cold. And we'll have a lot more. And doesn't, as of right now, actually early look is very little wind this weekend. So as teams are competing for playoff opportunities, as you guys are all completely competing for fantasy championships, we won't have too much weather impact, but some good dome games. Arizona, Atlanta, we'll see you starting for quarterback at Arizona. Obviously, Chicago, Detroit, San Francisco, Vegas is going to be a really popular one to attack, I think, in that 4 o'clock hour. And then Rams, Chargers also domed. But, tons of teams to look to here. And stay tuned in for everything we have going on at Established Run. It's a huge slate. We'll be locked in all week long. We have Adam and Evan with their team-by-team pods coming out later today, as well as Adam's solo pod, and we'll have projections and analysis coming all week long. Definitely going to be a fun slate. Big week of fantasy and football coming up, both for real life, fantasy, and DFS, best ball, everything. Wish you all the best of luck in all of it. I wish you all a happy new year as well, and happy holidays. Hope it's been a great week for you all. Thank you for tuning in. We'll be back next week for one last regular season first look at the week 18 slate, which is always a carnival for fantasy purposes. So it'll be fun to talk about that next week. All right. Thanks for tuning in. Best of luck in week 17. Take care, everybody.